Okay, today I'm going to show you how to remove the engine covers of a Takeuchi TB016. Same would apply to an OB or 014. That is the water pump, which I've changed. Here is the old one. As you can see, it's leaked mostly from the spigot. But rather than risk putting a new O-ring, etc., I thought I'd put on a new one, as this machine is quite old now. This one is a compatible one. I can show you the leaflet in a minute on a video. The original costs £450. This one I think £180 with the VAT. But the problem is, to access it you need to remove the engine covers. Now, I did download a workshop manual which I purchased, only at £5–6, but in all honesty not very informative. To give you an example, to remove this part, the engine cover, it just says remove 6 bolts, not showing where they are. But if you go on engine configuration with a spare part blow up, it gives you a little bit of an idea. But basically you've got 1, 2, 3 bolts that side, and 1, 2, 3 bolts that side. Before you do that, of course, you need to remove the canopy, which is straightforward. All the bolts accessible. The only thing is, the wire connection for the lights is actually under that bit, and I found the easiest way: take the bolts out the front, take the bolts out the back, lift the canopy up, which is quite heavy, and put 2 blocks of wood underneath those brackets. Enough room that you can put your hand up underneath, pull down a wire tang, and you will then find this cable, which is situated about, move that pipe, there. And you can reach up in and disconnect it, and then simply lift off the canopy. Again, need 2 people, quite heavy, quite awkward. Back to the engine cover. Those bolts correspond 1, 2, 3, and these are accessible from underneath the machine. But to do so, you will need a 17mm socket and a swivel directly onto it. You'll need one of these swivels and then a 17mm socket directly on that. Some extensions, bit tricky, but is doable. Now the bolts this side, you got 1, 2, again accessible from underneath. The other one, the tricky one, is that one. That is accessible from inside the engine cover, and to do that you will need a swivel, a long ratchet, etc, etc. But again, it is doable. But if that's tricky to get back in, I'm going to leave it out. Right, a quick thing about the bolts on this side. They were quite corroded because they are long and they come up through a sleeve. Now when I put these back in, I've cleaned them, rust painted them. I'm going to put a load of grease around them. Hopefully it will stop any future rusting. But before you do that engine cover, because I took it off before removing this bit, the counterweight, the problem you have, if you try taking it off first, these catch on the engine and it makes it really difficult to lift it off. Another little tip I learnt, on here place 2 little blocks of wood so that when you put your hand underneath to lift it and lower it back on, it's not going to trap your fingers. Once you took those 6 bolts out, it's literally lifts straight off. Now the counterweight is very heavy, 70 or 90 kilos, and this is attached with these 22mm bolts, 3 through these 3 holes. You got 1 hole, 2, 3, accessible from down the back. You can't, well, I couldn't find a socket on them because of stuff in the way, so I used a ring spanner and a ratchet ring spanner. It's very heavy, but what I did, rather than lift it off because I was on my own, for this part. I chopped it up underneath with blocks and oak, wood, etc. till it was tight underneath this bit. And then I simply walked it back. It sits on these. That sits on that. So be warned, once you pulled it out past this bit, it will drop off, and it is heavy. Other than that, that's pretty straightforward, and when you've done all that, then you've got good access to remove the radiator. Now, I did try taking this pump out without taking the covers off, etc. Because you can't get the fan off, I accessed 2 of the bolts but not the 3rd one. Now, the old pump sits like that. This is the bottom, this is the thermostat, and you've got 1 bolt, 2 bolts, 3 bolts. This is the arm for the alternator. And obviously the 4 bolts that hold the pulley, the fan, etc. But when that radiator is out of the way, everything is accessible. Simple job, undoing everything. You will need to take out the sensor there, and the drain plug, and put them into the new pump. Now, I did change the belt because I thought, well, while it's off, because that would be a workup, I'll put a new one on. And I just went on the Takeuchi spares dealer websites, found a local one for me, and they posted it to me. Wasn't expensive, about £10. Worth putting on, I think, because you're going to do all this again otherwise. Now, the thing to remember, to take this rad out the way, because the manual just says move rad out the way. Right, you've got 4 bolts. 1, painted them grey to sit there, you can see them. 2, come around the front. 3, and then round the back, down there, the 4th one. Now, remove the oil cooler, but do not take it right off the digger. Just leave it forward, and then you can gain access to this bolt here, 10mm bolt, and this bolt is okay to get at. They remove a cover, which I'm tapping on. You need to take that cover out of the way before you can remove the rad. I did try taking off this bit and lift the rad out, but you can't unless you disconnect this drain pipe, and which is up in there, very awkward to get to, so I thought leave him well alone. The drain plug to drain the water is underneath the digger there. Simply undo that, drain the system out. Now, I did put some rad cleaner, flushing it, etc., because even though I've had this digger for quite a number of years, never given me no trouble. In fact, still the original battery, other than fuel filters blocking up all the time, which is common on it, it's bulletproof reliable, and it hasn't done big hours, so loads of life left in it. Right, so I flushed it out, refilled it, new antifreeze, but I need to change the antifreeze, I think, more regular, because I think that was the problem. Right, obviously reassembling it is exactly the same as taking it all off. You put the blocks of wood on there, so when you put that down, you're not trapping your hand. All pretty simple. Lower it on, bolt it up, bit of a struggle, and then stand up the counterweight and attach the 3 bolts. Right, this pipe here goes like that, the air intake. To access the fan, the only thing I must remember to say is, before you take the radiator off, disconnect this, the fan cover. You've got 10mm nut there, 10mm nut there, and the same at the other end. When you've undone them, you will be able to move this towards the engine. You need to do this so that when you pull the rad out, you can clear the blades, but you've got to be careful they don't damage the radiator, because it is tricky to manoeuvre, but basically you move it this way to about here, and I just held it there with a piece of rope, a strap, stop it falling over, etc. And that gave me easy access to undo the 4 bolts on the blades. That takes the pulley off, and then you can easily access the water pump. I cleaned up inside the water pump with electric wire brush attachment on the drill because it was quite rusty. Just something like that, not expensive. Silicone lubricate the new pump spigot, put on the new O-ring. That bit there, they give you an O-ring and this replacement gasket. It also comes with a gasket for here, but I didn't use it. I just put the housing with the thermostat in straight back in because it had a big rubber thing already on it, and I thought I'd leave that. It looked fine and it's working fine. While it was off, there was some corrosion here and over the other side where the water was laid between them, so just a case of giving it a bit of a paint up. Also, I like to spray everything with a spray bottle with WD-40 in. Don't buy the tins, just go and get a gallon, fill it with a spray bottle, and I spray everything with it. It's a good rust preventer, etc, etc. And also, whenever I put bolts back in, I dip them in a bit of copper grease, just because they won't seize in there. Right, anything else? I'm just going to show you that where I got the water pump from, and then I think we're done.
Well,
oh, a pump. Okay, these are the people that I got the pump from. L&S Engineering, there's the phone number, website address. Took about 3 or 4 days to arrive, but it was good. The belt I got from go on the Takeuchi website, dealer website, find one local to you. Wasn't expensive, it came the next day, and it's a genuine part. So, anything else might help you out, just ask me, otherwise, okay.